This is my first video talking about the people known as the Apache. And that to you is probably an Indian tribe from back in the days of American history. They still exist today. They're much different people. They've been integrated, and they are a part of the current American society. So their ancestors were much different, say 150 years ago. But the history of the Apache goes back even further. And I have talked to you about Native American history, traditions, and important information. But I haven't done a lot. I actually had a series we produced on Internet Global with Lewis, and that was interviews with my friend Michael over in Arizona. But anyhow, this is a new thing. We're just going to kind of ramble on with some important facts that you didn't know about. Where can we begin? What are the most notable things about the Apache, would you say?
Well, I would say their flexibility, like their capacity, like to modify the, like things that they do and still maintain the sense of their own cultural, spirit. Like these guys still have a very lively sense of who they are.
Still?
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to talking about what they were before they got overrun and had to compromise into the new system. Let's go back to the 1700s and on into the 1800s. Probably that's the most colorful and well-known time. Of course, Geronimo, Cochise, and Victorio were all born in the early 1800s. But their fathers and grandfathers were from the 1700s, according to the modern calendar. Well, how would you describe Apache life from back then? Where did they come from? Where were they living?
Well, they're a part of a language group that's called Athabascans, and I think that they came down here from the northwest, fairly far north, like British Columbia,
Is that contested?
Alaska. I don't think so. I mean, except by Indians who have beliefs about coming out of holes in the ground and stuff like that.
Except by Indians.
Yeah.
This is a big area, and actually I heard some
but
very
that's
radical
metaphorical and mythological kind of
concepts, well, the
you know.
Indians have their own myths and their own stories and whatever you want to call legends about where their people came from.
Yeah, I don't know an awful lot about Apache.
The myths are in symbolic language, and we cannot just dismiss what the meaning of the symbol. We can't just dismiss it as a fiction. Because the meaning of the symbol might be something literal that science does not know about. They are anthropologists.
Yeah, Apaches do dances,
Tell us
loosely
about
referred to as the mountain gods. They reenact these mountain gods. Like the Apaches like high mountain valleys, like with a little bit of water in it that they can grow things in. They can live in, and they can hunt and fish, in these little streams, and they can grow food, and they're very, very, very flexible and adaptable, like many people are, but they're especially so.
These are very rugged people.
They turned into good ranchers and good well drillers and lumbermen, and they can do just about anything that anybody else can do, more so than some people who have a hard time, getting a grip on it, But
they're very practical people and a hardy people because of the southwest terrain.
There was a serious attempt to wipe them out because they were such rowdy raiders, and fighters, if you.
The war was going on.
Right.
Who started it, I don't know, but it developed into a very drawn out, very heated contest to see who would rule over the region. And this is considered Apache ancestral land. The entire southwest and what's the northwest of Mexico.
Yeah, I have a real strong
So this
sense of Apacheria, you know, like from
Apacheria,
New Mexico and
Apacheria.
Arizona, yeah. You know, like
Transliterated as Apacheria.
Apacheria, yeah, that's like a sort of like a Spanish way of saying it, you know.
So you're talking about a
Yeah.
huge amount of land,
Yeah.
a beautiful land.
Yeah.
I mean, today covered with national parks, national monuments, forests, sky islands is predominant.
Yeah, a lot of variety, a lot of biodiversity out here.
Biodiversity, even in the midst of deserts. In the flat
Yeah.
bottom lands can be very arid. But let's talk about ancient history. It wasn't always arid. Now, was it?
I'm not sure.
Wasn't it full of life and precipitation?
Well, yeah, if you really look at it
more
closely,
humidity.
it actually is full of life even in this day. You know, like
Yeah.
humans are stressing it a lot because there's so many of them. But there's a tremendous amount of life in this country because the extremes of climate are so strong that the evolution produces a lot of diversity, and this is probably also true of the humans who live here.
Very unique,
you know, that they
for
become more flexible.
in terms of the biodiversity or the biotypes of species, the uniqueness. You know, probably not as much as some areas of Australia or Tasmania or Madagascar, but it's up there in its uniqueness because of the unique species that you can only find there, from the animals to the plants. So this is the Apaches' home, the environment, and the Apaches were, like I said, they're characterized by their prowess in war. They are known. They're legendary. Look at the movies that they make. Fort Apache, The Bronx. You know, it always have the word Apache in it. There's military hardware, equipment that they call Apache.
Yeah, helicopters.
Yeah. So Apache, and the most fearsome warrior to stand up against the United States, probably in the top three, other than Osama bin Laden now, was Geronimo, was it not?
I think Cochise was pretty serious, you know, like he brought them to a total standstill.
Well,
they finally let him have the valley where he lived, you know, like eventually.
We're going to get into the specifics of that. Cochise is actually a larger figure. I say should be much more of an influence, but the fact is that he got a more watered down remembrance because he surrendered. Cochise fought just as long as Geronimo did. He was actually Geronimo's senior in age, and not only that, he was the chief. Geronimo wasn't officially a chief.
Yeah.
He was a war leader.
Yeah, and
he was considered a minor leader.
As a medicine man too.
Yes, he was in that regard. So, but as far as you know, his standing, he was one of the smaller clans. He came from more of the south. They all seem to rotate around an area of Warm Springs and Hot Springs, New Mexico. That was like their center.
Yeah, Victorio lived over here. The Warm Springs.
Victorio was from there.
Yeah, but Geronimo was more of
Geronimo was from the south.
Chiricahua and way down into Mexico, of course.
Yeah, Geronimo was from further down there.
A lot, but they like to live in these particular type of environments, you know.
Geronimo was from a tribe with another chief known as Ju. Ju was the chief, and they were close when they were growing up. Ju went on later on to really be like a lieutenant of Cochise. And Ju is also has another name called War. Kind of like when Keanu Reeves does that thing. I don't know how else to describe it. Because he has unusual names. I never heard of anyone like Ju or War. But he defended Cochise on many occasions, whereas Geronimo branched off because probably what happened to him personally. You want to go over that? This is a well-known thing, but it's worth repeating. What happened to Geronimo back in the days when he wanted, where his vengeance comes from, his revenge stems from the crimes against him and his family.
Mostly by the Mexicans.
Yeah, and Geronimo wasn't even his name. That was a name that he took on. His real name was, I probably will mangle the pronunciation, it was like Gotolai? Gotoye?
I never knew it.
I'm sorry if anyone can correct me. I couldn't tell you the spelling. Yeah. It's like a g sound.
Yeah, I've never
been. And the legend, which I think is true, Geronimo with the j sound, Geronimo, is from when he was in a scuffle or a battle with Spanish-Mexican forces.
On San Geronimo Day.
No.
Yeah.
This is how I heard it. He was killing them, and they were in the midst of being destroyed, and they were calling out to Saint Jerome.
Yes.
So in Espanol,
right,
it sounds like that. Jerome de Santos, Jerome.
Yeah,
so
Geronimo.
The other Indians in his war party later on and saying how great Geronimo was, kind of in a way joking around, calling him Geronimo, because it seemed like they were all the Mexicans getting killed were screaming at him, Geronimo.
Yeah.
So
yeah. There is the San Geronimo mission.
It makes you wonder, but I don't have a better explanation that I've ever read. And it seems like that's how people have quoted Geronimo saying that. And Geronimo survived longer than the other ones did. He had a surrender, I think it was in 1888 or 1889.
I think he was selling pictures, like postcard pictures of himself.
But if you want to hear about the transition, you watch the movie with
West Studi?
James Stewart called Broken Arrow, which is a portrayal mostly of the surrendering of the Apache Nation through the head chief, the top chief of all the tribes, Cochise. Cochise means he's as strong as an oak. And it came to him in that year, I believe it was around close to 1870, if not, it could have been 1869 or something like that, right after the Civil War, and he surrendered. Because at that time the Civil War was done and the cavalry was heading west and putting more pressure on the Apaches.
Yeah, they had a lot of places to put them.
They had a little bit of a respite for a few years because the Civil War was occupying in the east. When it was done, 1865, 1866, they moved more attention to conquering the Southwest, to putting down the Apache War. And Cochise is the one that was running that for a long time. So how did it get to be that way? You need to see the turning point is in Broken Arrow. I think it's a rather good dramatization of that period. Historically quite accurate. Cochise is also the one that first became known to the Americans as the cutting the tent incident. So we'll rewind to that. But I just want to say that in Broken Arrow of that period, Cochise had a showdown with Geronimo because surrender was and peace was being offered, and Geronimo would not take it. So basically, Cochise told him, "Get out of here," because he had already made a decision to deal with the white people more peacefully.
So then it went on.
So this was a big turning point, and from going on into 1870 and beyond, Geronimo kept fighting with the
well, he would make an agreement, but then he would take off and he would start it up again.
Geronimo would always start it up again for many years because he would never let his soul rest about what happened to his family. So, put yourself in his shoes.
There's a picture of him, you can see he is one pissed off individual.
You can look at his expression. How would you compare him to someone like, well, no, let's go back into Cochise. Cochise started out also on the warpath. His father-in-law was the great elder chief Mangus coloratus. Can you tell us anything about coloratus?
I don't know much about him.
He was.
There's Mingus is still a pretty important name among the people.
Yeah.
And,
well, the thing, he was a great chief, but unfortunately he ends in a terrible way because they captured him, and apparently he was beheaded. And there's a big dispute still today, is that his head was desecrated because it was taken by these filthy U.S. military who somehow they took it to Washington, D.C. And there were some accounts that it had ended up in the Smithsonian.
Oh yeah, that's a weird thing too. It's like this legend of Geronimo's head or skull, you know. Like
Geronimo's head.
Yeah, like a Skull and Bones Society, and there have been efforts every once in a while to.
Well, this is like Oliver Cromwell.
Whether or not still has his.
Because you know his head was they exhumed him and took his head off after he was already buried. He was a defiler of sorts. I mean, in some ways, Oliver Cromwell was great in the history of the British. But that's a whole other story. That's a whole other story because of the way he treated the Irish. But let's talk about the origins of Cochise. By marrying into the family showed that he had ambition and he had acceptance to move into that age where he would rule and unify the tribe enough to stand up not only against the Mexicans under the Spanish, but then the Mexicans in their independence, but then against the onslaught of the Anglo-Americans. And this was a long battle. It's said that the Apaches were fighting the Mexicans, Spanish, for 300 years. And they gave them a lot of trouble, and that's probably one of the main reasons why the Spanish could not control the northern half of their empire. They made Santa Fe up in New Mexico as their northern capital. And it was supposed to be connecting them up and down through the plateau between the Sierra Madres, the oriental and the occidental side, east and west. They have a big plateau there from New Mexico, Arizona, down into Chihuahua, Durango, and all those other interior regions, down to Mexico City. But it never really worked out. And you've got to factor in how much the Apaches refused to let them have what they wanted. Because after all, the Spanish were invading. The Mayans and the Aztecs and everybody might have just folded and, given up. But the Apaches are going to have my respect for being really the last ones in the New World, on the continent, to stand up to the European invasion. They were the last ones to stand up to the extent that they did. They were putting up this gargantuan defense.
Yeah, what's wrong with a little violence once in a while?
I could say a lot of things to that, but we are a beaten down tribe at this point, and we come from that. And you see what the dividing and conquering has done. You see this imperial system, and you know damn well that I am not going to bow down to it. So let's talk about the Apache, because the spirit of the Apache lives on. Cochise even though he surrendered,
That's a found
there's a
truth.
reason. I can go into
Yeah,
all
that's
this
a
if I
real
do the
concrete, that's what
series.
I'm
Okay, I
concrete.
can explain
If
it
you
to
take
you.
it out in the road, it would really bounce along.
But let's
You
talk
probably
about.
use it, though, because it
You
has some weeds.
you do a really good account on this. Tell us what happened in the cutting of the tent. Tell us what happened.
Oh yeah, it cuts tent and escapes. Yeah.
Cuts tent in this case.
Yeah, that's right. Well, like Cochise was, he was, like providing wood for the Butterfield stage stop. Which is near a river called San Simon, which crosses
It was kind of a lumberjack.
Interstate 10. Yeah, well, I would say that he was probably just bringing that firewood. He might have been making some lumber too. It's possible to say, just exactly what all. But he was working for Butterfield for that operation. And they had the stage line, and these military people, got a wild hare and tried to take him, and they actually killed some of his family. And he cut the tent and escaped through it. And then he fought them for at least 5 years, and they finally had to accept that they were not going to defeat him, and agreed to allow him to have the Sulphur Springs Valley, which goes pretty much.
He'd never been
that whole
defeated
area,
in battle.
Yeah, that whole
Cochise.
area, which goes up where the San Pedro River, and the San Simon River, and all those little rivers that are down there in the Chiricahua country, and like around Tombstone, Arizona, and north of Douglas, Arizona. That whole valley north of Douglas, Arizona was ceded to Cochise while he was alive. But then after he died, then they just started running cattle all over it. They
There's
took it
so
for
much
themselves.
history
Yeah.
in this, the stories of the Apache. I'll tell you this, if we're going to continue on with it, but just take it
I'm
in
very
this scope,
fascinated with the Apache now.
that
but I
take
don't
it like
know
this.
much. Yeah.
You give me
Yeah.
100 Apache warriors, and I'll let you take 10,000 of your modern soldiers
Yeah, that's been said a lot of times, actually.
and bring it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
These
will
guys
feel
were-
confident.
Yeah.
Alright? Now that's saying something. I'd rather stand with 100 Apache warriors.
Yeah.
Give me a head start, we'll show you. We'll go into the wilderness
Yeah, these
and we'll
guys are
take
like,
you all out.
Yeah, they're like rangers, like
We
these
have you
guys
shaking in your boots.
Yeah, these guys are like rangers. They can disappear.
I
They
have
can stand
I
there and
have
you
a
won't
lot of
even see 'em.
respect
Yeah.
for this
Yeah. An Apache can be so still
tradition,
that you
the
won't even
skills,
see 'em.
the skills.
Yeah.
Forget about it.
Yeah.
Well, think about today with all the modern weaponry and things. It's sort of why Cochise surrendered, because he saw what the Gatling gun could do, right? Am I right?
I don't know,
Automatic
maybe,
and artillery fire and
that's quite
such.
possible.
And he just shook his head and was, there's no way we can defeat them. We've really been overpowered, and I don't think it would be a fair fight anymore, and Cochise had to face reality. I don't think he could make any other decision. Unfortunately, Geronimo couldn't see that rationality.
Well, it's really, if you mess with somebody's family among these people, then they're your enemy for life.
It's like with anyone with common
most
sense.
people, of course, are like that.
You hurt my family,
but these guys,
you're going to die.
These guys could keep it up.
Period.
Yeah, they really could keep it up.
I don't see where that changes.
Cochise may have been somebody who had decided that wasn't the best way to live.
Well, it's better to live in
That's what I mean
peace
by flexible.
and compromise if we can parlay.
Yeah, if there's some kind of way to.
But when there's no parlay,
yeah.
Gotta do what you gotta do. Alright, that's the start of our series on the Apache. If we get a lot of response, which I hope we do, we're going to talk more about it. This is an incredible, legendary, true, amazing people. The way they live too, close to nature, respectful of nature, that I don't see any other people. So I think we need to resurrect some of these ways, and some of these rituals are very, very profound. Okay.